Hey, what's going on? Thomas Keenan, Step It Up Entrepreneur Podcast. You guys are in for a treat today. Just wrapped up this amazing podcast episode, this interview with Paul Epstein. Paul is a very accomplished gentleman, worked for many years in professional sports, NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball, the whole 9 yards. Has a hell of a story. You'll learn a lot about it on this podcast here today. Paul's also a published author, keynote speaker. Definitely someone who is just energized and wants to really give true, amazing value to other human beings. So definitely hop into this one. It's a little bit longer of an episode. It's almost an hour long, but I'm telling you, you're going to get a ton of value out of this one. So come in, check it out, and do us a favor. I got one call to action here, okay, besides listening to the episode. I need you to go and leave a 5-star review over on iTunes or Spotify if this show is positively impacting you in any which way, shape, or form. If you could do that for me, that'd be super grateful. It'll be very helpful for us as well, because it's going to get the show in front of more people. The more people that listen to this, the more people that are going to go and do some amazing things and help themselves get better, whether it's in life or business. With that being said, enjoy the episode. Later. Hey, what's up? Welcome back to the Step It Up Entrepreneur Podcast. Your host, Thomas Keenan. Got Paul Epstein with us here today. And Paul and I were just kind of chopping it up here before we went live and getting to know each other a little bit. Dude's got an awesome story, published author, very accomplished gentleman. And I'm just really excited to have you here and kind of climb into the inner neural pathways of your brain and find out what makes you tick and what's helped you get to where you are today.
I love it, Thomas. Let's do it. Climb into the inner pathways. I don't even know that, like, if my wife has ever done that. So this should be a fun conversation, man.
Yeah. I just, I love chopping it up with people and learning from others. And my mindset's always been like, I don't care what your title is, what you've accomplished, what you've done, how much money you make. There's always something you can learn from another individual.
100%.
Yeah. Let's hear it, man. Like, there's a big sports background with you. So Let's hear a little bit of the story, how this kind of came together, some of the things you may have accomplished over there. Because I saw your paperwork come over and I was like, this dude's done some shit. I like it.
Yeah, we've definitely done some shit. So, all right, let's talk about where the shit started. All right, 15 years, NFL, NBA executive.
Yeah.
And what that means is, actually, I'll tell the story of how I broke in. All right, so I graduate USC, sales and marketing guy, working for a Fortune 10 company, outside territory sales manager. And as I'm cruising around in my territory, this is circa 2004, 2005, Mel Kiper, who is a massive name in the NFL college football circles, he is a draft guru. So he starts studying kids in junior high and kind of forecasts. And he's got this high energy, like just go type of vibe.
Yeah.
And he jumps on ESPN radio. I'm driving around my territory. Mm-hmm. And Mel comes in. Have you ever wanted to work in sports? Have you ever dreamed of working for your favorite NFL, NBA, MLB? And I'm speeding down the highway like, yes. Yeah. And then Mel says, call 1-800-SMWW now. Mm-hmm. I call that number. It was Sports Management Worldwide. I took an 8-week online course. And on the back end, the professor said, we love you. Who can we introduce you to? I said, I want to stay in LA and I want to sell. And they said, great. We know the folks at the Staples Center. Mind you, This is in the Kobe and Shaq era. Yeah. They're winning championships. And so here I am, a proud born and raised Angelino, thinking I'm going to hang out with Jack Nicholson and the Laker girls, Kobe and Shaq and the whole thing. And all of my friends in my family, they're so stoked. And a couple of problems came up. One is never met Jack. Mm-hmm. The other is Kobe and Shaq were in the building, but they were on the other side of the hallway because I got the introduction to the other team, the other guys. I was selling tickets for the LA Clippers.
Yep. Got it.
ESPN, a year before I started, called us the worst brand in sports. Second week on the job, front cover of Sports Illustrated, worst franchise in sports history. There's 3 fans, Clipper fans, with paper bags over their head. And one of them written on it says, just shoot me. And I had to sell that.
Yeah. Yep.
So that's how I broke in, brother. And you want to talk about walking through fire. Now, when I'm firing up stages all over the world, telling some of this backstory, I literally call this chapter of my career where I learned how to play offense in a defensive environment.
Yeah.
So for everyone listening in, defenses, hurdles, struggles, setbacks, obstacles, all the stuff that typically is out of your control. Like I had no control of whether the Clippers won or lost,
Yeah.
but I had to monetize it.
Yeah.
I had to sell it. I had to represent this brand that nobody at the time, it's much better now, decades later, nobody wanted to represent it at the time. And I figured out a way. And that started this whole fast track from LA to New Orleans, Sacramento, and some of the fires that I walked through there. New Orleans, we had to save the team from permanent relocation. Then Sacramento, company culture was one of my top initiatives. I had partnered up with HR, and then bang, league-wide labor lockout.
Yeah.
So how the hell do you manage morale when it feels like people's livelihoods are taken away?
Yeah. Yeah.
And, you know, and that just gave me more testing grounds of, can I truly play offense in these highly defensive environments? Then a more positive chapter comes up. I end up at the NFL league office and we shattered some Super Bowl revenue records. So I don't have a lot of adversity to talk about there other than massive expectations. We did a 400% goal year over year because the game was in New York. So cool story, but ultimately, you know, it was just more the pressure that was the defense in that case. But then check this out. My last 4.5 years in the industry, head of revenue for the San Francisco 49ers. And in the midst of that, we had to face 70,000 fans in the aftermath of Colin Kaepernick kneeling. So you want to talk about more fires, more defensive environments. And those are just, as they say in Sports Center terms, I gave you some highlights, but there were a lot more lowlights. The highlights were in the business results, because that's why I'm here telling you this story with a smile on my face and I'm fired up about it. But bro, like in those moments, it was hard. And we lost a lot of people along the way that just didn't have the same grit and tenacity and determination to fight through it.
So let me ask you a question here, right? Because, you know, going back and looking at time, when Colin took a knee and it started this big movement, right? I mean, it just became
Totally
this
big,
massive press release thing and everyone was talking about it. So, okay, all eyeballs in the country are on this for the most part, right? What does that do behind the scenes to the organization? What was the scramble? What were the real problems and the real fires you guys had to put out because of that?
Yeah, I love sharing this because, and let me just lead with a disclaimer, and I'm going to give the raw truth of what it was like on the inside, but I'm not here to share anything that's political or social by nature. I'm just going to tell a story of facts of what happened on the inside. So for those that may or may not be as familiar, I think most people are, but look, he takes a knee during the national anthem. So this was way bigger than a sports story. This was CNN, Fox, and beyond. And there was, hey, is he disrespecting our flag? And so there's this patriotic piece. There's a veteran piece. There's a military piece. Eventually there's law enforcement and cops and you name it. And most of our fans, I would say 80%, within hours of the game ending, Sunday afternoon, he takes a knee. By the early evening, phone calls, texts, emails, the loudest voice in the room, and the through line of all that was cut him from the team or we're out. Cut him from the team or we're out. Meaning, I'm a season ticket holder for 30 years. Cut him from the team or I'm out. I am a corporate partner. My name is on the building. Cut him from the team or I'm out. And so we're talking a massive, potentially bloody day financially. And so a couple things happened. That night, I get a call from my boss, the team president, and he asked, what's the damage? I said, look, man, it's super fresh. Back in napkin math, 80% of folks are saying cut them from the team or I'm out. Tens of millions, maybe $100 million if everybody actually goes through with that. And he said, okay, 8 a.m., get everybody in the boardroom. Sales team, service team, Jed York, our owner, Jed wants to talk to them. Great. All right. So we rallied the troops. Now, before I tell you what Jed said in that meeting, I'll tell you what I expected. I expected some CYA, some, our PR and comms team put something together and you don't veer off the script. That's what I expected. Because at this point, I was already a dozen years into the industry, so I kind of knew how it worked. The other part that I expected was a business decision would get made. And I'm not proud to say this, but I'll just tell you, because we all know this. If you follow sports, there's a couple things about controversy. When something like this happens, the two things you analyze are, what did they do and who did it? So as an example, if Tom Brady does something controversial, he'll be fine. He's the GOAT. Michael Jordan, like, hey, just look the other way. I'm not excusing it, and I'm not saying that's right. I'm just telling you, business has a short game mindset. Sorry, sports has a short game mindset, and that trickled into the business thought process in many cases. So when you tell me we're going to bleed out tens of millions, maybe $100 million for a player that was not at peak performance. Colin was a couple years past his best days. He's declining. He's a fringe starter at that point. So what would you do? And the majority of people are like, I get it. I would make the business decision. All right, so let's go in the boardroom at 8 a.m. Jed steps up and he says, we at the 49ers will always protect the human right of freedom of expression. I don't care if you're in sales, accounting, operations, or you're our quarterback. We will forever support and protect that human right. Chase the storm. Return your phone calls, your emails, your texts.
Yeah.
And let people know that this is where we stand.
Mm-hmm.
And if they're not happy with it, make me, Jed, available. And I literally, Thomas, I looked around the room and every single person had this shocked look on their face, but their chest was pumping out. Like you could tell that people were like, holy shit, this dude has our back. He's backing somebody that almost in that moment seemed unbackable. And when I talk about this, it falls on how we respond to adversity. And where I want to center us in this conversation right now is adversity does not build character. Adversity reveals character. Jed revealed his character in the biggest of storms. And what's crazy, Thomas, is to this day, people like me that are no longer at the Niners, we bleed red and gold because of moments like that and how consistent he was over the years. And the craziest part is, I'm not even sure if most people in the room agreed with his decision.
Yeah, but they understood what he was doing for the team. For the
exactly right. They connected with the values and the character, whether it was left, right, this, that, like, didn't matter. And so, yeah, man, I just thought that was a cool way for me to understand how to not only navigate controversy,
Yes.
but really develop a resilient mindset through storms.
Yeah, this to me is like the ultimate epitome, the ultimate example of making a values-based decision.
Totally.
Yeah. You know,
Totally.
we hear people talk about it a lot. Should I talk about it a lot when it comes to culture, infusing culture in a company and whatnot? And, you know, make the decisions value-based, not emotionally based. And sometimes you got to make the tough call. And like here's the owner of an NFL franchise who's got to make a call that will potentially cost him hundreds of millions of dollars.
Yeah. And let me tell the end of the story as far as, because I think this is important. I just gave you like the juicy stuff,
Yep.
But here's the business impact. So remember I said 80% of folks said cut him from the team or we're out? Well, fast forward, dust settles, about 15% ended up leaving. And here's my hypothesis on why. And I think everybody listening into this can 1,000,000% apply this. For the 5 years leading up to Colin taking a knee, there's 32 NFL teams. We finished in the top 4 of customer service, ratings, reviews, surveys, scores. So we were treating people like gold, like birthdays and anniversaries and making those lifelong memories. Way bigger than football, way bigger than a win and a loss.
Yeah.
We were giving that Disney white glove type of service.
One quick question here.
Yeah.
Those surveys and that feedback being gathered by the end or from the end user, is that something that's done on a team level, or is that something that's done on the league level?
Team level. So in other words, out of 32 teams, we ranked in the top 4 out of 32 for 5 consecutive years.
Yeah, but I'm saying as far as sending out those surveys and collecting them, is the team doing that or is the league doing that?
Oh, both. Yeah, there's a league wide, so there's a standard, and then of course we localize it because we can ask customized questions that would be unique to our building, as an example. But there are standardized things that go across the league. So great question, and so here's my hypothesis as to why. So when you treat people like gold during the blue skies, they often repay you with their commitment and loyalty during a storm. So for me, I thought of these as deposits. We were depositing relationship capital over the years and building and strengthening those bonds. And then when something totally out of our control, Colin took a knee. I had nothing to do with that. My sales team had nothing to do with that. Their service rep had nothing to do with that. But we were the ones facing the front lines and facing our fans. And so when they said come from the team, it was raw emotion. Yeah. But once cooler heads prevailed, some people still left us, and all good. You know, everyone makes their own decisions. That's cool. But the majority of folks that said come from the team didn't leave. And my hypothesis is that had we not treated them like gold during the blue skies, they would have never repaid us with their commitment and loyalty during a storm.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. There's a lot of lessons we can grab from that and unpack for sure. For sure. All right. So tell me some more about sports. We're talking 49ers here. I'm in Dallas now. I know you've done some stuff as well with the Cowboys.
Yeah, Cowboys are great. Culture's great.
Yep. I'm over there a good amount, headed over to the Star, and I'm 15 minutes from the Star. So nice. See their facility and hang out there a bit, which is cool. So tell me a little bit about the transition you had coming out of, we'll call it professional sports, what you're doing now. I want to get into a little bit about your books, what they're about, how you're helping people there. So let's hit the transition period.
100%. Well, you mentioned it earlier, making values-based decisions.
Yeah.
The whole reason I took a Jerry Maguire leap out of sports was my core values. So if you would have asked me anytime before August of 2016, would I ever leave sports? My answer would be hell no.
Yeah.
I found my thing. I found the ladder that I was supposed to be climbing. It was like a kid in a candy store moment, like a total dream come true. Doesn't mean every detail was perfect, but I had no reason to jump off this treadmill. No reason. And then August of 2016 happens, and there was a leadership retreat that changed my life. Team president, my boss, and all of his reports, we go offsite for 2 days. And it was the first time in my life that I ever worked on myself, that I ever went through kind of that personal discovery, my why, my core values, how I could step in every day with more intention and purpose. And I was the crazy guy in the room that didn't leave those 2 days and let it become a sugar high. I got so obsessed with it that for me, and I share this as a keynote speaker today, but I practiced it back then in 2016. I said, I know that this magical feeling that I have leaving the retreat will turn into a sugar high if I don't have a disciplined process on how to apply it. So what I became obsessed about is, all right, well, I believe that life is a game of decisions and actions. I just figured out my why and my values. How can I connect my decisions and actions to my why and values? And I went through a deep audit. This was separate from the retreat. I did this hard work, heads down, on my own while it was still top of mind. Literally within a week of that retreat, I had pen to paper. It was messy. I didn't know what I was doing, but I felt like this was the only way to sustain the magic that I felt leaving that room. And so fast forward, a couple weeks go by, I'm back in the 49ers front office. And for anybody that would listen to me, I was preaching from the top of a soapbox. Let me tell you all about this retreat. And people thought I was just absolutely crazy. Like I drank some secret punch and I got recruited to the other side. It was nuts. But a couple people came up to me the day after and said, hey, Paul, so that thing you did at the retreat, you think you could help me find my why? And that started a bit of the water cooler buzz. Business folks led to some coaches, led to some players. Then HR says, look, we're not going to force this on people. But what if we could coach this to our onboarding employees on an opt-in basis, their why? And that's how I became known as the why coach of the San Francisco 49ers. And that was a side hustle. That was a passion project. My day job was still heading up revenue. But I fell more in love with my passion project than my day job. And it was a feeling and a tug that I couldn't ignore. And so then as I stacked up my core values, growth, belief, authenticity, courage, and impact, and I defined them in my own words. And then I started to create I will statements. So those are my action statements. And I told myself after I defined them, I'm going to commit to not just a swing of the bat with each, but I want to take a big swing of the bat with each. So my will statement for growth was I will do something that I said I would never do. So classic growth mindset, tear through the muscle. I said I would never go back to school. Well, maybe this is my cue, because an MBA in sports doesn't hold as much weight as it does in other industries. You don't need it. It's just a nice to have. So I never thought that I had to take that step. But now, in the spirit of my value of growth, I'm like, screw it. Let's rip the Band-Aid. So executive MBA, University of Michigan, Los Angeles cohort, I sign up. My first month in the program, I had another first and another life-changing experience. For the first time in my life, I sat down with an executive coach. Never happened before. I had mentors in sports, but it was different because my mentors all knew my boss better than they knew me. So when they asked me, Paul, how you doing? My default answer was great, great. Even if I was 60% good, 70% good. I had fear to talk about the 30 or 40%. So I never fully opened up, but I finally had a safe space. And my executive coach, this was the conversation. And this is what leads to the Jerry Maguire leap. She said, Paul, I know what you do. You hit up revenue for a football team. That's great. What do you love about it? What do you hate about it? What do you tolerate? So love, hate, tolerate. And I answered all three. And she said, go deeper on that love bucket. I said, you know what, Sue-Ann? I love coaching people just like you. I love the culture side. I love the people side. And she said, awesome. On a good day, what percentage of your time do you do that? I was like, oh, shit. I slouched down in my chair. I'm like, my ego puffed it up to 20. The truth was probably 10%. She said, okay, Paul, 20%. Got it. I wave a wand. You become your boss tomorrow. Does that number 20% go up, down, or sideways? It's like, well, my boss is almost all strategy and less people. You know what, Sue-Ann? I think it'd go down. And this was the question, Thomas. She asked me, so what are you after? It's such a simple question, but it has such profound meaning if it hits you at the right time in the right place and you're ready to hear it and you're ready to act on it. And so at this moment, mentally, where I knew with confidence, I don't think this is my ladder anymore. What if I'm not supposed to be in this space? And my strongest value based on my late father is impact. Impact is the value I would fall on the sword for more than any other. And so I put that to the top of the list. And as I was collecting my thoughts, flying home after this conversation with Sue-Ann, I literally asked myself, can I create more impact inside the walls of this industry or beyond the walls?
Yep.
And at that point, it wasn't even a courageous leap.
Yeah.
It became something that I had to do.
Yeah.
And it's all because of making that values-based decision.
Man, we have such a similar story. It is not even funny. Now, I wasn't running revenue for NFL teams, but I'll give you the Reader's Digest.
Yeah, please.
So I've been a business owner my whole life. I started at like the age of 19 with my first company, started that one up. I failed it, went back in a couple of years later, started another one, and it took off, did pretty well. And in that company, we installed GPS tracking and dash camera systems for commercial fleets. And prior to that, I was a custom car audio installer, which I loved. I had a passion for it. Okay, I went to trade school for it, worked with my hands for many years, transitioned over to this GPS tracking thing because, I see the opportunity. I see the dollar sign that's there. I'm not in love with the work. I don't love the stuff that we're putting in these vehicles, but I see the opportunity. Take it and run with it. Get to a point where I'm like, all right, cool. I know how to do this really well from the technical side of things, but I don't know how to grow the business. So start hiring the coaches and the mentors and going down the self-development rabbit hole like you did, right? And going through and doing the hard work, asking the love, the hate, tolerate questions.
Yeah.
Go through, you do all this stuff, you establish the core values, you figure out your purpose, which is not easy, by the way.
No.
And I'm a couple of years into this, like, whoa, this business is great, but it's no longer fulfilling me the same. Because now at this point, I'm maybe 9.5, 10 years into the company, and I have people knocking on my door asking me to coach them in business. They see some of the cool things that we're doing, some of the back end systems, processes, and operations we've put in, and people are asking me to help them grow their companies. Cool. So similar to you, HR comes to you and says, "Hey, do you want to do this as a side hustle?" I had one of my existing coaches hit me up and say, "Hey, do you want to coach as a side hustle under my organization?" I said, "Yeah, sure I do."
Oh, man.
So I started doing it. And just like you, I have this overwhelming sense of fulfillment when I'm able to help somebody.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. How do I do more of this? So COVID hits. I'm still living in New York at the time. I'm born and raised New Yorker. And I was like, that's it. I got to go. Just wrapped everything up, exited the company, sold the house in New York, moved to Dallas, moved down here, and then took on the coaching stuff full time. And I got to tell you, like, I've never been happier. I've never been more fulfilled. Like, so many things in my life have gotten better because I'm in the right alignment and living out daily with the values and the purpose.
So good. Well, yeah, I think beyond this podcast, we'll definitely, we need to raise a glass to all of that, man. But the cool thing about these leaps and these transformations and these discoveries is, because I don't know if you get this, but I always get the question of like, hey, do you miss it? Or do you have any regrets? Or would you do anything different? No, like I'm good. Like I'm not, I think people think they focus so much on, oh, are you running away from something?
Yeah.
I'm like, no. I found something I was inspired to run toward. And I needed every step of that journey.
Mm-hmm.
The funny analogy here is it's like dating. You got to date some crazy before you find the one. Like I had to have some jobs. I had to do this industry. I had to scratch an itch. I had to work in great cultures, bad cultures, okay cultures. Like you need that. And then when you experience that other side, you're ready to experience it. I think one of the bigger dangers, and you can't avoid this danger, sometimes I see a lot of youngsters where they're straight out of school and they work for an amazing company, an amazing culture, but they don't know it because they have nothing to compare it to. Yeah. And then they'll leave the $10 to make 11 and it's a toxic 11 and then they regret it. And sometimes they never get back.
Yep.
And because it starts a vicious cycle. So I just think there's like a beauty in like, whether it's a pain or whether it's like a process that didn't give you fulfillment, there's the other side's pretty sweet, but you needed the whole steps along the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's shift gears here for a second.
Yeah.
You're a published author. So am I. I've written one solo. I've also written one that was a collab with a couple different authors.
Great.
I had a second solo that I started and life took a complete left turn. And a lot of the stories I tell in my books happen to do with some life stories and experiences. So I decided to hit the brakes. But I will get back to that because book number 2 is definitely in me and needs to come out at some point in time.
I love that.
With that being said, like, tell me a little bit about when did you have the epiphany? It was like, oh, I'm going to become a published author one day. Did you have a want or a need? Was it someone who pushed you in that direction and said, hey, you've got to do this? How did it come about for you?
Playing offense in defensive environments is how it happened. Ironically, the title of my first book is The Power of Playing Offense. And the defensive environment that it was born from was a little thing called COVID and a pandemic. And so we all have our March 2020 story. Yeah. Here's mine. So I go all in on, all right, my Jerry Maguire leap is end of 17. I joined the organization that led the retreat to do a lot of the consulting and training work in the people, leadership, and culture space. That's what I did for 2018 and 19. At some point in the calendar year of 19, I was like, you know what? Keynoting fills my cup more than other things. So I'm going to go all in on that. The company saw it a little bit differently. And I said, cool, then I'm just going to do it on my terms. Yeah. So I bet on myself in 2019. January 2020 is the first time that I felt like it. I acted like it years before, but technically I became an entrepreneur January of 2020. And so for 2.5 months, I was rocking it. Like the stages and the invites and the fees and the impact and all of that was just phenomenal. I literally remember my last event before this shutdown and this thing called COVID. It was like the first week of March, the MLS stadium in downtown LA where LAFC plays, Bank of California Stadium. I did a Y full day workshop for SoFi Stadium leaders and the whole team. So we had hundreds of people, complete buyout of the entire facility.
Wow.
And on the video board, it said, find your why.
Mm-hmm.
So we did half a day on find your why, then the second half of the day on find our why, more the team and the organization. But it was one of the coolest events I've ever done in my life.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that a week later, it was all going to be gone. And so March, we all get the news in our own way. And so for me in the events business, I rely on in-person events as a speaker.
Yep.
It's gone.
Yep.
So, you feel sorry for yourself for a couple days, couple weeks, whatever it is. And if you play offense, you can't stay there too long. So practicing what I preach, I committed. What I did, my exact process was when I knew that I got time back. So rather than focus on what I lost, which was stages and money and impact, I said, okay, what did I gain? I gained time. All the lack of travel and I now have time at my disposal. The big question is, what do I do with it? And so I looked at all of my mid to long-term objectives. I knew that part of going all in on speaking was eventually I'm going to write a book.
Yep.
But would I have written it in March of 20? Nope. But the environment created an opportunity and I leaned into it. What's crazy though, Thomas, is now I've written 2 books. First one, I had no idea what I was doing, which is probably common for every first-time author. Second time, you better know what you're doing. So it's kind of the graduation from checkers to chess.
Yeah.
It gets more sophisticated. You get more strategic, more savvy. And I'm happy to talk to you about the things I did in my second book versus first. We can go there if you want. But regardless, in quarantine of the spring of 2020, I cranked out a 300+ page leadership playbook of every single insight that I ever had for the decades in sports and beyond. And I wrote it in less than 90 days.
Wow, it's quick.
Because that's all I did. And it taught me this amazing power of focus and intentionality. And it's a lesson that we all struggle with when we're busy and we're juggling a lot of things and we're chasing shiny squirrels and we're high achievers and high performers and we go, do. Focus is really hard. But because of what I learned in the process of committing to and writing my first book, it always I haven't become unfocused since. I become less focused because the planes, trains, and automobiles are back. But I'll never forget the process and kind of that lifelong lesson of writing the first book during a quarantine.
Yeah. Yeah. Lots of stuff to unpack there. And I agree with you too. I'm definitely an individual who got more focused during quarantine. It wasn't that I wasn't focused before. But life is moving at 1,000 miles an hour every day. We're all busy individuals. We got these crazy devices in our hands that go off nonstop. And finally, society gives everyone the okay to take the foot off the gas and literally sit home and do nothing, order alcohol to your house, and watch every episode of Tiger King on Netflix. Right? And
Preach.
I fell victim to it for a while too. Just like you said, you kind of took your foot off the gas. Same deal. Took a couple of weeks and relaxed a little bit, and then all of a sudden I'm like, this is crazy. Can't do it anymore.
Yeah,
can't do it.
And that's great. I think to have these I have no regrets. I'm happy that you need a week or two. But I'll say this, bro. Your week or two, my week or two. Some people, they haven't even come out the other side yet. So it's kind of like, and I'm not knocking anybody. I'm just like, hey, if you didn't. Like everyone had these magical insights and okay, I talk about purpose and why all the time, right? And I think a lot of people started to think about their own purpose and their why during the quarantine. But if I was to do an audit on the percentage of people walking down the street that had that aha moment back in 2020 or 21, and I'm asking them, how has it changed your life? How are you different today than 2019? And sadly, the majority of people wasted those lessons and insights. Yeah. Not everybody, but so many people. And I'm like, dude, don't waste these opportunities. The world woke us up.
Yeah.
And now we just went back to, instead of living by design, we're just drifting by default. So part of what I do is I wake people up. I raise their level of awareness so they stop drifting by default and they start living and operating and running businesses by design.
Yeah, I love it. Talk to me a bit about keynote speaking. So your intention was, okay, I'm a speaker. I'm doing some good things here. Eventually, I'm going to have to write that book that's going to help support the speaking, right? Because for those who are listening, the way it works is oftentimes the book which, by the way, in my opinion, is the world's greatest business card, aka lead magnet you could ever have.
100%.
Yeah. You have that thing kicked out, cranking, you put a little website together for it, you send people there, and all of a sudden, I wouldn't say all of a sudden, but in my experience, I'll give you a quick snippet of it here. My book was launched in June 2019, and 2 weeks later, the president of the Mobile Electronics Association called my phone on a Saturday morning and says, "Hey, can you come speak at my next event," which is in August. It was weeks away. Now, the backstory is I had been up this guy's ass for over 2 years trying to get on a stage. And we joke about it now because he became a good friend, but he literally gave me the runaround and didn't want to talk to me. And all of a sudden, one day I become a published author, and then he's like, "Oh, hurry up and come speak for me." So, what was it like for you to get your foot kicked, behind the door? What does keynote speaking look like for you now? How often are you doing it? And at this point, has it become another revenue source for you?
Oh, not just another. It is the Trojan horse of my business model, my impact model, finances, all of that. But it didn't happen overnight. And I'll never know, and nor do I care about this answer. I'll never know the impact of COVID on my speaking business in the sense of, oh, could it have accelerated 12 months faster? I don't know. Don't care. That's energy I don't need to expend.
Bingo.
But all that I will say is you write a book in the spring of 20. It launched in the spring of 21. So in between, it's all the editing, the design, all that good stuff that just is out of your control. So March of 21, we cut the ribbon off of what became a national bestseller in The Power of Playing Offense.
Mm-hmm.
And what was really cool about that is, to your point, it opened up doors and gateways almost immediately. Now, given I live in California, so we all know, and this is not a political statement, but depending where you live, you either experience like 30 days of COVID or 3 years of it. Where I live, we were on the latter side. I'm in Cali. So all that to say, I was having to get on a lot of planes to start to mobilize this message into parts of the country that felt comfortable gathering and doing all that. But also, over half of my speaking in 2021 was virtual. And, look, it was good. I enjoyed it. But did it give me, to use one of your words, as much fulfillment as lighting it up in person? Not even close. Yeah. I did a keynote for 12,000 people virtually. And literally, I was talking to a black screen. And then after I said my final remarks, there was an 8-second gap. And then somebody comes on chewing gum and says, "Thank you, Paul, for those inspiring words. Signing off." And then that was it, dude. Wow. And again, look, grateful for the opportunities, but that is not why I became a keynote speaker. But it was a byproduct of the environment. How do you play offense in a defensive environment? So fast forward, a lot of good things started to happen as I built my own momentum. I got a speaker manager, and there were different agents wanting to represent me. And so, what that looked like is, I spoke a few dozen times in 2022. So number of stages in the 20s, I've 2x'd. I've grown 2x 2023 versus 2022. What's crazy is by mid-April, I surpassed all of 2022. And I did something that I think is very valuable to share with everybody. Universally applicable. Speaker, business owner, beyond. You could be anybody and apply this. I started to lock in on standards over goals. Here was my process. In December of 2022, it was a good year, but not a great year. I was a little frustrated at myself. I didn't feel like I had momentum. I knew that 2020 hindsight, I chased too many squirrels. I found too many shiny objects that I wanted to pursue because I was passionate about all of them. Which is why actually one of my buddies, Jay Ferrugia, I don't know if you know Jay, he has this awesome thing. He runs the Renegade Radio, all this other stuff. Amazing guy. He has a wonderful saying, which I'll share quickly. Instead of asking yourself what you love, ask yourself what you hate not doing. And so for me, where I read the book Essentialism in December, I started to apply this process of doing it. Yeah, I love it. Greg McKeown, he was a big endorser of Better Decisions Faster, my new book. But I went into 2023 locked in, like beyond locked in, brother. Like instead of doing 8 things, I was going to do 1.
Yeah, but
maybe
really
2.
Well.
And there had to be synergy. And it was just locked in mode. And so for me, the standard over the goal was Remember going back, impact is my strongest core value. Let's bring this back to values-based decisions. I said, Paul, what process in the spirit of being essential can you implement so you have a more successful 2023 versus 2022? And I call them impact seeds. I wake up at 4 a.m. every day. That didn't change. I was already doing that last year. That's not the change. But what I told myself is I'm going to journal the night before 3 essential activities that I will do before 7 a.m., which is when the family wakes up. Kiddo wakes up at 7 and I lose control of the morning. As for those parents out there, you know what that's like. But 4 to 7 a.m. is my domain.
Yeah.
Nobody can mess with me 4 to 7 a.m. And so as a result, I said, what are the 3 most critical and essential things I need to do? And I banged them out every morning before 7 a.m. And one of the 3 was plant 5 impact seeds. An impact seed is some person that I want to drive impact with, a relationship to build or enhance. It's a phone call, it's a text, it's an email. 5 seeds, 5 seeds. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Think about the compounding effect of how many seeds I was planting. I started this process in January. I surpassed my revenue and impact production from the prior year by mid-April because I believed in a standard. It was not a revenue goal. I always had revenue goals, and they're arbitrary, and sometimes you hit them, and if you're really good, you hit them most of the time, but it's arbitrary, and it didn't get me out of bed.
Yeah.
Revenue goals don't inspire me, but I never will not do my standard. And so my standard of planting 5 impact seeds ignited all of these stages, all of these doors opening, all of these relationships that blossomed. And right now, my one word for the year was momentum. That's what I journal before my 3 critical activities, because that's what I was lacking last year. Right now, we're firing on all cylinders. And it's because of locking in on the essential standard over goal.
Dude, I love this. This is first of all, it's not complicated. And most people want to overcomplicate it because then it gives them the excuse to give up. Right? Here it is, real simple. You wake up in the morning, you have your set time. For me, it's 5 o'clock. For you, it's 4. You're a better man than me. But regardless. But you have it right here. It's plant 5 impact seeds each morning from the hours between 4 and 7 a.m. That's it.
That's it.
Yeah.
And it's cool because during the day, the dopamine hits of the responses and it's not just production, it's feel good too. Like every day is a positive and energizing day because people are like, oh my gosh, so good to hear from you. Or, hey, let's explore that. Let's set up a call. Like all it is momentum of relationships.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
Yeah. I love it. I think that's beautiful. And it's awesome. Give me an example of one of the kind of seeds you'd plant. Let's say, let's say it's a text, right? Obviously that person's got to be a contact. They got to be in your phone. Maybe you have in the CRM or some sorts, but what does a typical outreach look like for you to plant seeds?
Yeah, well, as a lot of marketing pros will tell you, the whole reason of being online is to go offline. So if your phone is online, I don't care if it's a phone, if it's a text or an email, the whole point is we got to connect. We got to talk. All that I'm doing is thinking of the right 5 people to set up connections, coffee meetings, calls, Zooms. It depends where they are in the world, all that stuff. Why do I want to talk to them? And it's not just like, hey, let's do business together. Like sometimes this is like the types of relationships that could be 1, 2, or 3 degrees removed from the people that you really want to connect with. But it's this organic, authentic, like, dude, let's just hang. I'm going to invest time, my most valuable resource, into you because I want to meet you at the 50. And so that's an impact seed. Let's not overcomplicate this. All that I'm doing is setting up, I'm using an online platform, my phone, to create an offline connection.
Yeah.
That's it. And it ranges from friends, past clients, current clients, people that I'm inspired by, the type of company that I surround myself with, fellow speakers, and we have masterminds. And I'm like, hey, I'm a little frustrated. Like there's 20 use cases, but ultimately all that I'm doing is creating future connections. That's it.
I love it. I think it's brilliant. I think if anyone gets one single takeaway from this call for action items, like that's it right there.
Yeah. Plant 5 impact seeds a day.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about the second book. Here you are, you're out, going, doing this whole podcast tours, getting on people's shows like this here. And that just tells me you got something in the pipe, right? So that's book 2. When is this sucker ready to come out? What's the title? What's it about? What are you trying to accomplish with it?
100%. September 26th, big launch, better decisions faster, unshakable confidence when you need it most.
Mm-hmm.
So if we can lock in on this fact, I don't believe this to be arguable.
Yeah.
Life is a game of decisions and actions. Mm. And whether you take action or not is a decision in and of itself. Mm-hmm. If you audit your past decisions of consequence, of significance, of higher value, the big ones, your relationships, your career choices, your health, where you invest your time, the investments you've made, show me the quality of those decisions. I'll show you the quality of your life. Mm-hmm. And that's a serious statement, right? So, but then when I say this, people are like, yup, fact, so far I'm following, Paul. I'm tracking you. Awesome. So now I go back. So how do you make your biggest decisions? What's your process? What's your system? And almost nobody has it. Mm. It's very random. Some people are heavy logic. Some people are heavy emotion. Some go risk reward, but nobody has a consistent process. Some people, gut and impulse. And, hey, I talked to my 3 closest relationships. Well, okay, you do that for the majority of your critical decisions? Yeah. Well, no, I guess when I have the time. Interesting. So part of this was, if life is simply a game of decisions, business included, then how do we maximize for not only the best outcome, but the most fulfillment along the journey? So how we do this, and look, the problems that this book solves for: decision fatigue, decision overwhelm, paralysis, which leads to the worst decision of indecision. Mm-hmm. We're all stuck at these critical forks in the road of life, and we freeze too often. And I believe the solution is confidence. If I can write a playbook for how to get people's minds clear, their heart clear, so now they're more confident in their actions, which is the back end of what we have with decisions. Yeah. That's the spirit of the book. Mm-hmm. Now, the quick masterclass on how we do it. I call it the head, heart, hands equation. Head is your mindset. Heart is your authenticity. Hands are action. Mm. The equation is head plus heart equals hands, meaning when deciding whether to use your hands, whether to take action or not, 2 checkpoints, head and heart. Mm-hmm. Head, do I think it's a good idea? Heart, do I feel it's a good idea? Yeah. When head and heart are on board, just like a traffic signal, it's a green light. Take action every time. Yep. When no head, no heart, red light. Don't do it or stop doing it, because now you're aware. When one of the 2 is on board, it's a yellow light. Why did I write Better Decisions Faster? It's to fill our lives, our businesses, our careers, our relationships, our health with more green lights. Yeah. I'm also creating some awareness so that we can stop subconsciously running reds. And then also, here's the playbook for the messy middle of yellow. Because most of your biggest decisions, about 80% is what the research says, you're going to end up in this yellow light. And so that's too much to discuss in a podcast. Right. That's why we got to get the book. More greens, stop running reds. That's the playbook for how you navigate the messy middle of yellow.
Dude, I love it. I think it's awesome. So September 26th. Yep. Launch. What platforms, where?
Amazon is the best place. And look, anything and everything that I do is on paulepsteinspeaks.com as well. The books page will drive you right to it. Awesome bonuses too. Like I've got some big hitters of, like, there's a confidence masterclass, 1-to-1 time with top executive coach in the world, Marshall Goldsmith and beyond. I mean, Mel Robbins endorsed it. So like we got a lot of, to use the word of the journal, we got a lot of momentum. A lot of momentum. And you know what's cool, Thomas, is some of my impact seeds have made this book even more special. Whether it was the testimonials, like you mentioned, true story. I talked about the book Essentialism. Greg McKeown is the author. You said, great book. I think it's a great book. It transformed my year. That's for damn sure. Well, the way I got connected to Greg was through an impact seed. Okay. And then we told him about the book and he's like, yep, sign me up. Wrote a wonderful testimonial. A small example of, you don't plant impact seeds because you know that that's what's going to happen. But if you consistently plant impact seeds, things like that do happen.
Yeah. I got a similar story, right? I was reading a book about 2 years ago. I was sitting here at this desk reading a book. It's a book called The Talent War.
Yeah.
Two
Good.
former
Great book.
dudes. Yeah, great book. Former dude, Mike Surreal is a Navy SEAL, and his partner, former Army officer. I forget the dude's name at the moment, which is embarrassing, but it is what it is. So I read this book, and at the time I'm running a big team, and like I have these light bulbs going off in my head like crazy. Like, oh my God, there's like 8,000 things from this book that I can go implement today that are going to make a difference with who we're bringing on to the organization. So I'm all excited about it. And I don't know how you are, but I'm one who will typically go out and start stalking people on social media if I like them. I don't mean it in a bad or a creepy way. So I go out, I go on the Instagrams, I start checking these dudes out. And I said, you know what? This is where the confidence comes in. Let's send these guys a message and just tell them thank you for writing this book because I got a ton of value from it. Me as an author, when I get those messages from people who've read my book, it feels good. And you know you're making impact. Awesome, cool. So
100%.
I bet these guys are going to like it too. I reach out, I go into an Instagram DM, I shoot these guys a group message and just like, hey, read the book, started working on these XYZ things. Want to say thank you both very much for all that you do. That turned into ongoing conversation with both those gentlemen to this day, where we check in on each other, random email here and there. I've had them on my podcast as interviews. They've come in and spoken at events for me. So I don't hold back. That to me is definitely planting a seed, and you just never know where it's going to take you. And the worst thing that could have happened, two things, in my opinion. One, they never would have replied. And number two, they could have said, no, we want nothing to do with you. And either way, like, is that terrible? No.
You know what's crazy, Tom? A great story and great example and proof of what we're talking about. So my buddy does work with a lot of folks that are sadly in terminal states. Okay. They've got days, weeks, or months left. And he interviews them and he looks for themes that he can teach out to other people that still have years ahead in their lives, like you and I hopefully do.
Sure.
And he says, Paul, the number one word that I hear from talking to all these folks is regret. And what's crazy is they don't regret the swings and misses. They regret the swings they never took. And so here we are. We're so fixated as a society. Am I going to hit the ball? Am I going to hit the ball? Am I going to be successful? Am I going to get the applause? Am I going to get recognized? Am I going to get likes on my post? External validation. I got to hit the ball. It's all bullshit. It's all bullshit because at the end of the day, if you swing and you miss, and if you are a driven person with ambition and goals and hunger and humility, you're going to iterate, you're going to evolve, you're going to get better over time at hitting the ball more often. But too often people don't swing the bat. So my message is, instead of focusing on, are you going to hit the ball successfully, just swing the bat. And obsess with the learning that comes from the misses, because that's one thing. The through line of my books, Playing Offense and Better Decisions Faster, it's confidence. It's confidence to swing the bat, because you know what people do that play offense that people that play defense don't? They are decisive and they're hyper comfortable with imperfect action. They don't give a shit if it doesn't go perfectly. They don't care. They're just like, fine, at least I moved. I made progress. And I think that that's a wake-up call. If you're sitting on the sidelines, there's people that aren't even in the stadium. The only way to get better is to get in the game. And I don't use this as cheeky metaphors. I use this because too many people, they get paralyzed because they freeze and they say, well, am I going to be good at hitting the ball? Screw that, dude. Don't die with regret. Just swing the bat and hit the piñata time and time again. Like, that really is the secret of life as I have seen it.
Yeah, I concur completely. Same deal with going to the gym. You know, like I started working out 5 or 6 years ago after neglecting my body for many, many years, more than I'd like to ever admit. Right. And it was a battle of sheer will of me just showing up for the first probably 2.5, almost 3 years. And it was a solid 2 years before I started noticing any physical differences.
There you go.
Right. But you got to show up and you got to swing, like you said. All right. I want to wrap up with this. We're about out of time here. I don't want to kill you because we're almost an hour. This has been awesome. Thank you so much for sharing in. Your energy is amazing too. So I just want to say thank you for that. But we talked briefly before we hopped on here for the call about your confidence quiz.
Yep.
Tell me a little bit about this, and tell us and the listeners where they can find this and get access to it.
Yeah. First thing, paulepsteinspeaks.com. In the main nav bar, you'll see confidence quiz. Here's exactly what you're going to find. It takes less than 5 minutes. And on the back end, you'll know your confidence score of 1 to 100. And when we email you the score, again, it takes less than 5 minutes. You're going to get a PDF of the 12 keys on how you not only build confidence, but you can sustain that unshakable confidence. So you're getting a score, which is a data point. And here's what I want to share too. Confidence is not a light switch. It's a dimmer switch. It's not yes, no. It's not off, on. I'm either confident or I'm not. Nope. You're an 82 or you're a 70 or you're a 48. Cool. That's where you are today. Dimmer switches go up 1%, down 1%. So what we want to do is just create more positive momentum. The quiz tells you 1 to 100, where do you stand today? And then we give you resources on how you can level that up daily. So again, paulepsteinspeaks.com, hit the confidence quiz in the nav bar, and you're 5 minutes away from knowing your confidence score.
Thanks, dude. This has been awesome. I appreciate you.
Yeah, I appreciate you.
Thank you for tuning in to the Step It Up Entrepreneur Podcast. Make sure you head over to stepitupentrepreneur.com and make sure you subscribe so you never miss an episode of the Step It Up Entrepreneur Podcast.